As I'm coming up on 1 year on board my 2020 Ducati Panigale V2, I thought it was about time that I made a long-term review. Currently, the weather in Michigan is what you'd expect in late January. Ice and salt cover the roads and dark snow clouds cover the sky. So to me, it's the perfect time to take a step back and take a look at all things that make the Ducati Panigale V2 really shine, and a few things that I was left hoping for more. But before I jump into the video, I wanted to ask you all to take a moment and click that like button and that subscribe button. As I continue to create new and exciting content around my Ducati, my Royal Enfield, and a slew of project cars and bikes that are coming, it would mean the world to me if you came along for the ride. Now, the 2020 Ducati Panigale V2, why did I choose it? Well, that's a really complicated story, and going into 2020, my mind was made up that I was going to cross off one of the biggest items on my bucket list. I was finally going to own a Ducati. Growing up in a family of petrol heads, the Ducati brand was always held on a pedestal. It was the Italian brand that truly embodied the spirit of the motorcycle and produced nothing but the best motorcycles out there. In 2019, Ducati unveiled the all-new Street Fighter V4, and if you've been on my channel for a while, you're going to know that this was the bike that I thought I was going to buy. I put the deposit on the Street Fighter V4 in November with an expected delivery date of March 2020. The Street Fighter was the bike I've lusted after since the original Street Fighter came out in 2009. Here's some proof. The year 2020 did not really pan out how most people expected, and my Street Fighter's delivery date got delayed further and further into the year. March became May, May became August, August became November, and it was looking like my Street Fighter V4 would have landed in Michigan dead smack in the middle of winter. Obviously not ideal. While the Street Fighter V4 was my dream bike, I was exploring options at this point. I'd never been interested in a sports bike, but I said YOLO. I jumped on Ducati Detroit to demo their Panigale V2, which was fully equipped with a slathering of Italian chrome and the lovely Acropoffic exhaust, and went for my very first ride. While the Panigale was a completely different beast than anything I had ridden before, there was something mesmerizing about it. I got off the bike and said goodbye to it. It was a nice experience, but it was not right for me. That being said, the very next day I called the owner of the dealership and told them that I wanted one. And this is how my Panigale V2 journey began. After 1 year of owning the Ducati Panigale V2, there are a lot of things that I love about this bike, but not everything can be perfect. So I'm going to break down a few of the highs and the lows of the bike right now. Ducati knows a thing or two about building high-performing V-twin engines, and while the V4 has jumped ship from the tried and true method, the Panigale V2 is here to keep the hopes alive for motorcycle lovers around the world. While the Panigale V2 is often clumped into this middleweight sector, there's nothing middle about the 955cc engine that pushes 155 brake horsepower. With a 0 to 60 of 2.8 seconds and a top speed of 176 miles per hour, the bike is beyond quick. In second gear, you're hitting 100 miles an hour. It's that quick. The V2 quickly finds its stride, making roughly 60% of its torque at a low 5,500 RPM, and honestly, that's just a great recipe for fun. One of the best parts of this bike are the noises. They are downright violent, especially with the addition of the Acropoffic exhaust system. Seriously, take a listen to some of these pops. They are intoxicating. Ducati quotes that the bike is good for 47 miles per gallon, and I'm finding similar figures. But if you keep the bike in race mode, be prepared for that to drop to the high 30s or even low 40s. This is the first bike that I've owned with a quick shifter, and I honestly don't think I could ever go back. The piece of technology is really nothing short of magical. Thanks to the kill times are vastly improved on the upshift, and the new downshift function is equally commendable, keeping the chassis settled while going through the gearbox. If you happen to rapid fire downshift from 5th into 2nd, you may need to let the revs settle ever so slightly before grabbing the final downshift. While I was expecting to encounter a false neutral every once in a while, I've yet to find it on the Ducati. The transmission is absolutely solid. The same 43mm fully adjustable Showa BPF forks come back into the fold, with revised settings. It's the same story for the fully adjustable sack shock, with the caveat that it's being extended by a scant 2mm to alter the geometry just ever so slightly. In practice, the suspension does an admirable job of keeping the V2 in line due to controlled spring and damper rates. I'm still riding on the stock suspension tuning as I quickly adapted to it when I took it off the showroom floor. This spring I'm going to take it to my local motorcycle guru though and get it dialed in for my 190-pound body weight, and I'll report back if that really makes a difference. Unchanged for the V2, dual Brembo M4 calipers clamp onto a 320mm floating front rotors. In the rear, a single piston Brembo caliper seizes upon a 245mm disc. Feel at the adjustable lever is quite good, though it's a bit on the softer side. Overall, importantly though, that doesn't mean that the M4 lacks any sort of power. They can handle anything you throw at them, and for those who are looking for a little more of an attack feeling, experiment with a higher performance brake pad. That could be the quick and cheap solution to the issue. Ducati's fit and finish is a bit of a legend, and honestly it's really hard to disagree. After riding and working on the bike for almost a year now, I'm starting to see it more of a motorcycle and less than a piece of art. It's a machine after all, and it begs to be rode. In 2020, Ducati designers wanted to spruce the V2 up and give it a touch more class, and they ditched the traditional swing arm this time around. It also serves a functional purpose. The exhaust silencer needed the space, helping rid European models of that unsightly shotgun silencer that was met with a lot of hatred. In 2020, Ducati also added a new pair of Y-shaped 5-spoke wheels wrapped in a slightly changed Pirelli Diablo Rossa Corsa 2 tires. The tires are now coming at a 120/70 and 180/60, replacing the shorter profiled 180/55 rear on the 959. As the power on these 1-liter machines climbs well beyond 200 horsepower, the segment increasingly relies on electronics to make the bikes rideable, which a lot of people would argue detracts from the experience. I'm not in this group of thought. The progress in engineering over the past few years has made these bikes so good that only a few people can truly ride them to the extent that they can be, and I'm bold enough to say that those people are pros or retired pros. For the rest of us in the world, I'm happy that these technologies exist, and it's one of the biggest reasons why I would recommend if someone was looking at a V2 versus a 959, that they side with the pick of the new bike. In 2020, you'd expect a TFT dash on the baby Panigale, and you won't be disappointed in this one. This was actually taken from the V2's big brother, and it's this eye-catching and easy to navigate V4 dashboard. Quickly cycling through riding modes is easily done on the left controls, while changing variables will see you jumping deeper into the interface. It's relatively easy to use, it just takes some time to figure out the controls. Though the TFT display, you can access 3 customizable ride modes: Race, Sport, and Street. Race offers the most aggressive throttle response without becoming choppy or rolling on and off, and boosts less restrictive rider aids. In practice, I found its setting and perfectly crisp throttle to be exactly what I wanted. Sport reins the V2 in with some restrictions, yet is still suitable for fast riding and is punctuated by a more relaxed throttle. It's really good for the spirited canyon riding I was doing while out in Colorado. Street calms the V2 significantly with more intrusive aids and has the most slacked response of all. I kept it in street when there was any sort of moisture on the road, any sort of gravel, anything like that, right? I want to stay up and right. Although sport bikes are not known for their comfort, the V2 is relatively pleasant thanks to a cushy textured seat. Not only does it grip your leathers and keep you from sliding into the tank, but it also has an additional 0.2 inches of foam to protect your butt. Yep, I said it. The seat has also been stretched by just over 3/4 of an inch, giving riders room to move around in the saddle. I was always able to tuck in much better and felt less cramped. Thanks to the increased foam, longer shock, and taller rear tire, the seat height is now raised to 33.1 inches. In anticipation of a taller steed, Ducati narrowed the seat where it meets the tank by a significant degree, letting my 32-inch inseam get my boots on the ground. Yep, I can flat foot on both sides, and I'm 5'9". I don't know where this tidbit of information needs to go, but I think it's important to share. If you've got a bit of a stomach like me, put a tank pad on the bike almost immediately. Either the zipper on my leathers or my belt buckle scratched up my tank within the first ride. Obviously, one of the worst feelings in the world is a scratched bike. It hurts me to tell you all of this, but learn from my mistake. Put a tank pad on, watch your zippers, watch your buckle. One of the questions that I receive about the Panigale V2 the most is about how hot does it really get? Well, I'll be honest, it gets pretty hot. I've seen the engine temperatures reach 220 degrees, and when it's just sitting there inches away from your leg, it can get a bit uncomfortable, especially when your feet are down at a stoplight or something like that. If you're riding during the fall or spring when the weather's a bit cold though, it's actually really nice as it keeps you a bit toasty. It's not really a comfort issue, but with the 17-liter tank, don't expect any long trips without stopping for gas a few times. In 6 hours of riding, you will be stopping at least 3 times, so don't forget your wallet. Some quick numbers for you. $27,000 was the price of the bike with the exhaust installed and the tire wheel insurance that I elected to have Ducati include. My first service was $419, which I had done at Erico in Colorado when I was out there visiting. I was having some issues with my bike in August and there was not keeping a charge, so that was another $85 or so in service for them to take a look at it. As for all of the accessories I've added so far, right, I've spent $300 on the Rizoma Spyr end mirrors, $210 on the fender eliminator kit from New Rage Cycles, and another $120 on the New Rage Cycles mirror block-off LEDs. If you want to know more about these products, I'll link to the installation videos below. As for insurance, I pay roughly about $2,200 a year for the V2. And while that's not cheap, it's nowhere as expensive as the V4 was going to be at $3,750. As for future plans, there are a few things that I'm looking forward to do in 2021. The first is a new livery for the motorcycle. I want something loud and obnoxious to say Burtoni Motors across the bike. In addition to this, I'm thinking of a clear clutch cover, but don't worry, I won't be switching to a dry clutch anytime soon. The sound of a bag of bolts being tossed around is just too much for me to handle. Between its lovely, approachable power, compliant handling, and state-of-the-art electronics, the V2 ticks all of the boxes I ask of a modern sport bike. Sure, it doesn't have the same ego-padding dyno figures as its big brother V4, but it's also a far more inviting end platform from which riders can extract loads of performance. It's like having the perfect size meal that satisfies without being over the top. And am I happy with it, right? Do I wish I waited for the Street Fighter V4? This is honestly a tricky question. I'm very happy that I bought the Panigale V2 because it's an absolutely stunning motorcycle and it's been a gateway to build a few different relationships that will help my channel ultimately grow. So it was a smart purchase because of that. That being said, it's a really expensive bike and I might have rushed into things with it. When I buy a bike, I have to also think what is the return of it for YouTube will be. And with everything being so expensive, it's really hard to find extra money to throw at it. If I got something like a KTM EXEF 450 and turned it into a supermoto, that would have been 20 videos of content that I could have created with it, far more than half the price. It's a bike that, you can't take lightly in any way you look at it. It's the Ferrari of motorcycles. It's fast, it's violent, it's expensive, but no matter where you go, it's going to draw a huge crowd. With that being said, I look forward to riding the Panigale over the next few years, and I hopefully spend some weekends on the track. That's at least the goal. Hopefully COVID goes away this year and we can all spend more days on the track. with all of that being said, this video is over. If you guys have any questions or concerns or anything like that about this bike, send me a DM on Instagram, throw a comment down below. While I'm not the ultimate source of knowledge for this bike or the Ducati brand or motorcycles in general, I do have a solid year of riding this bike, and I'm more than happy to share my thoughts. Right or wrong, I've got some. So throw your thoughts down below, like this video. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and go out there and ride safe. Thanks everyone for listening.
GoPro, stop recording.